The already heated discussion surrounding abortion recently reached its boiling point for some people with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Interestingly, this issue is usually understood as a disagreement in morality, when really it's mainly a disagreement about facts. Into the domain of morality fall questions such as whether murder, the intentional killing of a person, is wrong. And here most people are already in agreement that it is. Whether the fertilized egg in the mother's womb is a person demands a description about how the world is. That's not a moral question, because morality deals with the prescriptive. It deals with questions of how the world ought to be, and about how we ought to treat one another. The people who are most fervently opposed to abortion are convinced that the moment of conception is when a new person comes into being, and therefore ending this life is synonymous with murder. Pro-choice supporters, on the other hand, don't view the embryo as equivalent to a fully formed person, and therefore think that it should be the mother's right to decide the course of her pregnancy. The core of the conundrum is therefore the question, when does personhood begin? Similarly, we could ask, when does a child become an adult? We have to decide on a particular age as the cutoff point because there are privileges, such as the right to vote, that can only be afforded to someone mentally mature. The 18th birthday doesn't magically make someone wise enough to vote who wasn't just a day earlier. And surely some 15-year-olds are better qualified to vote than some 40-year-olds. We understand that a person doesn't mature at any one moment, but that it's a gradual process that goes on through childhood and beyond. For some reason we forget this to be the case when it comes to the maturation process of the embryo, and instead we demand clear-cut, black and white answers. Either it's a person or it's not. And we demonize the people opposed to her view as murderers and evildoers. Unfortunately, reality doesn't bend to our arbitrary concepts. The embryo has whatever capacity for feeling and suffering it has at a certain stage in its development, regardless of whether or not we decide to label it a person. For strictly legal purposes, it may be necessary to choose a certain moment in embryonic development after which abortion is prohibited, just as it makes sense to define the 18th birthday as the moment of getting the vote. But it's important not to have our picture of reality obscured by these purely pragmatic concepts. To strict pro-lifers, abortion becomes murder by definition, because they've bizarrely applied the concept of personhood to a clump of cells that is without the capacity for thought, pain, fear, love, or anything else that we recognize as essentially human. It's of course tempting to hold this position, because it relieves us of having to deal with the more difficult question of when the embryo is capable of suffering, and how to weigh its suffering in relation to the mother's, or the child's, once it's outside the womb. Ask yourself, is it moral to insist a child be carried to term that is destined for a short life of excruciating pain, illness, and deprivation?